All right, well, to be cognizant of everybody's time, I greatly appreciate everybody coming here tonight. This is the kickoff meeting for the Kitsap County Comprehensive Plan update. This update is due at the end of 2024. And while that does seem like a really long time from now, comprehensive plans are very complicated. They involve a lot of community conversation. And there are a lot of important decisions that are made along the way. So it's really important for everyone to participate as early as possible and as often as possible. So we really appreciate everyone who's here with us tonight. So to kind of go through what this presentation is going to be, this is intended to run roughly around 90 minutes on the outer edge, so everybody can get to the storm, watch the storm game or whatever they want to do, maybe have dinner. But what we're going to do is we're going to put together a presentation. There's going to be a little bit of Comprehensive Plan 101 for folks who have never really been through a comprehensive plan before. We're going to cover why is the comp plan so important? What are some of the things that go inside of it? What's in it? And then what are the steps we're going to be moving forward between now and 2024 to update this document? And then most importantly, how can you be involved and what are the really important periods where some of those, again, big decisions are being made that'll be most important. It'd be great if everyone could participate all the entire time, but we understand everybody's busy and we want to make sure we highlight the important parts where documents are coming out, documents are being reviewed, public testimony is being heard greatly. It will be throughout, but it will be intensified in certain areas, so we want to make sure you have that. Also, we wanted to introduce kind of the comprehensive planning crew for the 2024 update. We have some new faces from the past one to go with my very old face. So with that, Kirby, do you want to go?
Sure, thanks, Eric. Good evening, everyone. My name is Kirby Mesablu-Yobek. I'm the Environmental Programs Planning Supervisor for Department of Community Development.
Colin?
Hi, good evening. My name is Colin Poff, and I'm the Planning Supervisor for the Long Range Planning Division, also with the Department of Community Development.
And Melissa?
Hi, folks. My name is Melissa Shoemake. I'm a Senior Planner in the Long Range Division.
A couple staff who are not with us tonight. Jim Rogers is another planner in the long Range Division that will be working on a lot of the capital facilities and transportation elements. And then Cindy Reed is our Geographic Information Specialist. She probably won't be at most of these meetings, but any of the maps that you end up seeing between now and 2024 likely she made. So it's great to have everybody here. There's going to be some certain aspects of this. This isn't just going to be a presentation. If for some reason you run into technical issues along the way, you can email Alex Jarrett. She is the square that does not have a picture. She is kind of running behind the technology behind the scenes, and she will be able to help with some issues. She's going to do her best, but if there are some key issues coming up on the next slide, that would be the place that you could reach out. And again, she'll do her best while also meeting her needs here at the meeting. So there's two other ways that you can interact during this meeting. Again, these are entirely up to you. There's no requirement to do either of these. The first of which is if you look down at the bottom of your screen, I believe there is a Q&A button. If you click on that Q&A button, it does give you the ability to type in questions. Those questions then go to staff. Staff will attempt to answer the easy questions kind of throughout the meeting. We'll also answer some near the end of the meeting, but ultimately we're going to take all the questions and answers that come through that system, and we are going to answer them and have them posted on the website after the meeting. Additionally, this meeting is going to be recorded, so it is going to be available both on the county website and on YouTube for anybody who is so excited that they may want to see it again, or who think there might be somebody who wasn't able to be here who could actually see, might want to actually see it. So we got the question and answer button, and then after that, what we have survey questions. Throughout this, we're going to have surveys that are popping up. These questions are largely going to be of the what is most important to you. They aren't rank questions where we again want to take in public comment, but we want to keep things moving. So really, these questions are really based on priority. What is the most important thing? What is the thing that Kitsap is facing most? Just look at those questions through that lens. And actually, we're going to sample one right now with how long have you lived in Kitsap County? Go ahead and hit any one of the buttons. We aren't allowed as panelists to hit any, so go ahead and enter as you can. All right, we'll give it another few seconds here. Okay. Alex, you want to end the all right, so we have a lot of longtime Kitsap County residents. We also have some folks who have been here less amount of time. There's some folks who work here, and again, it's a couple of people who they don't live or work, and they're just interested in comprehensive planning. So largely, it looks like we have a lot of long-term Kitsap County residents who are very interested in what the next 20 years may hold. So going from there, we're going to get into some of the meat. So again, why is a comprehensive plan important? This is a document that's required by state statute that helps the county direct, first of all, growth, also the provision of infrastructure like roads and water systems and sewer systems to meet the needs of the citizens who are here today and the citizens who are going to be coming tomorrow. Environmental protection with the folks who are coming here and living here and working here. How are we protecting our shoreline, streams, wetlands, etc.? Housing choices. How can we make sure that there is housing for everybody? We focus a lot on the built environment. We focus a lot on the natural environment. But one of the key components in addressing growth is how are we going to maintain the human component of our community? How can we ensure that the people who have been living here can continue to live here? People with children can have places for their children to live, places where people who are aging have an opportunity to downsize, ensuring that we're keeping the people in our community that have been such a core component of our community for so many years. The comprehensive plan does not cover two areas of the county, two very important areas of the county. One is tribal reservations. That's the Port Gamble-Sklallam Reservation, far up north near Hansville. And then there is a Suquamish Indian Reservation. Neither of those are covered by the comprehensive plan. They have their own planning elements, but as they are separate government entities and not connected and responsible to follow comprehensive planning, they aren't covered. And then the other is naval lands. So places like the Trident Naval Shipyard and Keyport, those are, of course, incredibly important economic engines for the county. Unfortunately, we don't have any ability to direct their growth or direct their development in any way. So those two are not covered by the comprehensive plan. So we're going to move on to another question here. What is Kitsap's most attractive quality? And again, this is one of those most questions. We'll give it about 45 seconds to a minute. And one of the things here is common community interests. Again, just people like-minded, interested people like outdoor recreation, people who like water sports. That's what common community interest means. All right. Well, I think let's end that one. When the poll results come up, can the other panelists see what I'm seeing? Or am I the only one who's seeing the poll results?
I can see
Colin,
them.
you can nod yes or no. Yes, you can see them. Okay, so looking at the natural environment, including shoreline air quality, is definitely the leader in the clubhouse. This is, again, we're the natural side of Puget Sound. A lot of folks who have moved here from other areas enjoy our shorelines, wetlands, streams, trail systems, large regional parks. So it looks like there's a substantial interest in the natural environment as a part of our comprehensive planning. So let's see, I believe this one is me as well. We're looking at the Growth Management Act adopted in 1990. That's an overarching state statute that says Kitsap County and all other jurisdictions shall have a comprehensive plan. They provide 14 goals. Those goals are to be balanced, and that balancing is to be based on local circumstances. So what things are like here today. So what you're looking at here is you're looking at a lot of very important qualities of a community. From urban growth to reducing sprawl to economic development, housing, historic preservation, citizen participation, and you also have protection of property rights. One thing that you will note is not all of these necessarily marry perfectly together. There are some that the interests of one might not necessarily meet the interests of another. It is the responsibility of the comprehensive plan to balance all of these, to come to some kind of compromise in the middle to ensure that we are providing all of these important elements to some degree. It is often in that balancing that a lot of the community conversation lies. So some of the core GMA concepts, the first of which is that there are three main types of land. The first of which is urban land. That is places like cities, that is urban growth areas like Silverdale and Kingston. Those are growth focused. When new people are moving to the community and when new people are working in the community, we really are looking for them to be located in these urban areas. Housing is intended to be more dense. There's supposed to be shopping, jobs, transit opportunities. Again, these are kind of the core communities, hopefully located around high capacity transit or some other transit related service. Then there's the rural areas. The rural areas are what we're attempting to protect from growth. Rural areas are intended to be large properties, rural jobs. So again, farming, commercial related just pretty much to the rural population. Again, urban sprawl was one of the issues that Kitsap County had, and it's the protection of the rural area and protection of rural character that is the second of the core GMA concepts. And then lastly, ensure that you're preserving resource lands where you can. And when we're talking about resource lands, we are largely talking about commercial versions of timber, agriculture, and mining. Those are the three main resources that the county has to plan for. Again, like I indicated, urban services are supposed to be located in urban areas. So urban areas are supposed to have adequate sewer service, sidewalks, opportunities for multifamily housing, and they're all intended to be in this concept called urban growth areas. UGAs is another word for it. These boundaries are intended to be limited. Again, we don't want to convert rural lands unnecessarily, so the urban areas are supposed to be compact, and that is again where the urban services and urban densities are intended to be. And then urban services are generally prohibited in rural and resource lands. And that when I say generally, there's certain areas like Manchester, Suquamish that are allowed to have certain urban services based upon their past development patterns. But again, urban services like sewer predominantly is not supposed to be provided in the rural area. Sidewalks are another thing that are an urban amenity and are not necessarily supposed to be located in rural areas. Kitsap's GMA history was a little complicated. Anybody who was along for the ride through the 90s when the Growth Management Act was created, Kitsap had developed up to that point in a very un-GMA manner. We had a lot of small lots in our rural areas, less than 5 acres in size, 2.5s, 1 acres. On the shoreline, it was even like 1/3 acre lots. We had a lot of density out in our rural areas. That is what was often coined urban sprawl and was one of the things that jurisdictions were supposed to control. In our urban areas, we had lower density development, much of which located on cul-de-sac type development with road systems that didn't really connect, and septic systems. We had 1/3 acre lots, 1/2 acre lots that had a drain field and a reserve drain field, but weren't necessarily maximizing the land. We had, like I said, heavily divided shorelines. and undesignated resource lands. We knew where our mining was, but we really didn't pay much attention to anything else. And there was a strong public interest in the 90s and even to this day in maintaining those historic development patterns. We still see a lot of public comment about the desire for 1 acre lots in the rural area, or the ability to have a 1/3 or a 1/2 acre lot in the urban area so you have a broader backyard. Those are the types of things that we continue to try to have in Kitsap County. It led to larger urban growth area boundaries. It led to more rural area being converted into smaller lots, and ultimately led to a series of invalid plans. We had took us 3 attempts at a significant cost to have a valid plan in 1998. And since then, we have had, again, a valid plan with some very core elements that exist to this day. We have urban areas. Our urban areas are cities, lands that are city adjacent, like the Port Orchard UGA, like Parkwood, the Central Kitsap UGA. These areas are intended to be a minimum of 5 homes per acre. So again, much denser than we had in the past. And a lot of this historically has been predominantly single family development. And again, single family development is very important housing stock, but as we'll talk about later, really should not be your only option. And then our rural areas, instead of having 1 acre and 2.5 acre lots, now are a combination of 5 acre lot sizes, 10 acre lot sizes, and 20 acre lot sizes. So again, much larger lots than we have had in our historic development patterns. We're limiting existing denser communities outside of Manchester, Suquamish, Keyport, and some rural job areas. Those were pretty much our areas that are still allowed to have some kind of additional density. Everything else is intended to maintain the rural character in 5, 10, and 20 acre property sizes. And then resource lands. When we looked at our various resource lands and how we had subdivided our properties, we had a limited amount of what we call viable commercial timberland. And we've actually seen a lot of the timber companies in Kitsap County looking to get out and move to other areas that have hundreds of thousands of acres for logging. So our only commercial timber is really located in Green Mountain and owned by the Department of Natural Resources. We have a lot of small agriculture, small farms, et cetera, but we don't really have, again, large swaths of commercial agriculture. Again, hundreds of acres of land. Honestly, a 5 or 10 acre farm in Kitsap is large. For commercial agriculture, that would be totally unsustainable. And then mining. Mining at this time is still limited to existing gravel and other pits. Mining is one of those things that we really can't say where it should be. We have to pretty much say where it is, because the sand is where the sand is, the gravel is where the gravel is, the rock's where the rock is. And we need to acknowledge that in our planning. So here we have another question. What is the most pressing issue for Kitsap County in the next 20 years? A lot of good choices here. When we're talking about housing affordability, we aren't necessarily just talking about affordable housing. We're talking about the cost of housing across all income levels. Okay, if we can close that poll. And we have a pretty good spread. The 34% is, again, looking at the protection of the environment, including wetlands, streams, and shorelines. Housing affordability is up there as well as lack of bicycle and pedestrian options to get around. Some good responses in some of the others. But again, definitely the attendees today are very focused on preserving our environment and our quality of life here in Kitsap County, as well as ensuring that there is adequate housing for our residents. So with that, I believe I'm turning it over to Colin Poff to talk about regional plans.
Right. So Eric had quite a few slides there about the Growth Management Act, or at the state level, the kind of the umbrella that we plan under. And so the question is, how do we get from the state level to the local level, right? A comprehensive plan is supposed to be a blueprint for future growth for Kitsap County for the next 20 years. But it's important to understand that we do this within the framework of that state legislation, but also within the region that we're in, right? So under the Growth Management Act, any city or county that plans under the Growth Management Act is going to have a comprehensive plan. For Kitsap County, we operate in the Puget Sound region. And that would be the Puget Sound Regional Council, which encompasses actually a four-county region, which is Snohomish County, King County, Pierce County, and Kitsap. So the Puget Sound Regional Council has a document. It's called Vision 2050, and it guides the planning that we're doing today on the comprehensive plan. The Vision 2050 establishes population and employment targets for all of the cities and unincorporated areas and rural areas in those four counties. And so those are growth allocations. Granted, they're not projections of growth, but they're growth that's allocated to those areas. And there's a reason for that, and that is when you're thinking about where population and employment goes, well, Puget Sound Regional Council also holds the purse when it comes to transportation funding. And there's an element of kind of getting bang for your buck for transportation dollars as well when it comes to where growth goes. So with that in mind, we move down the ladder to countywide planning policies. So in the county, we have what's called the Kitsap Regional Coordinating Council, which is the county and cities of like Bainbridge Island and Poulsbo that actually create this document, create these countywide planning policies that are the guiding document for county and city planning and local transportation funding. And actually they sit down in a room and they look at this Vision 2050 and they adopt growth targets for those cities and for those unincorporated urban areas and rural areas. And the important thing to note here is that all of these things need to be consistent in order to have a valid comprehensive plan. We have to have consistency with the Growth Management Act and our regional plan and our countywide planning policies. And in fact, when there's a gap between where we're going or what's in the comprehensive plan and what those countywide planning policies say, we need to look at reasonable measures in our comprehensive plan to kind of bend the trend toward those larger goals or towards those countywide planning policies. So consistency is important. So in a comprehensive plan, we're doing, responding to local circumstances and how we want growth to occur, but we also need to understand where these growth allocations came from. And so on the next slide, it says what's in a comprehensive plan. Can we go to the next slide real quick? Okay. So what is in a comprehensive plan? You're not going to see things like building heights or how many parking spaces should a business have in front of it, or things like that in a comprehensive plan. Instead, it's a guiding document. It's a framework for the growth of the county, and there's different elements to that. But let's kind of start from the top, which is that every community needs a vision or needs a mission to be successful, right? So we have a mission statement that's been largely the same over the last couple of decades. And we also have vision statements. For example, the ones you see here: effective and efficient county services, thriving local economy, safe and healthy communities, protected natural resources, and inclusive government. And so it's important to have these values and this vision that we stand by as we try to do all of the complicated things that go into comprehensive planning. So on the next slide, you'll see various elements that are listed. These are all of the elements that are in the comprehensive plan. So these are all of the things that need to come together and move towards that common vision. So there's the mathematical, analytical side of planning, but then there's kind of the art of planning. And part of the reason why this process takes through 2024 is updating all of these elements and making sure that they all are consistent with each other and work together kind of towards the way that the community wants to go, and that there's not an obvious conflict here between these, and there's not an obvious conflict with the state and regional laws and plans as well. So these, if you look at any comprehensive plan for a city or county, they're going to have something that looks very similar, and that's because these are required elements to have. A couple of them are optional, but most are required. So you open up a comprehensive plan and we'll have chapters that will be land use, economic development, environment, transportation, parks, recreation, and open space, capital facilities, housing and human services, and then we have sub-area plans too. And so through this process, we're going to be looking at the goals and policies and the language that's in all of these elements and updating them. And I think we'll go back to Eric to continue the presentation.
Sorry about that. I actually tried answering a question in the middle of it. That doesn't work quite as smoothly as I expected. So that was kind of a respite from my talking for a little while, but one of the key elements of the comprehensive plan is the land use and economic development chapters. These are the ones that really kind of focus on, again, growth. And when we're talking about growth in the comprehensive plan, we're talking about through 2044. So pretty much the next 20 plus years of people and jobs. Where are they going to live? And how are they going to find housing and employment? It's important for us to ensure that we have urban growth areas, like we talked about before, where we can concentrate a substantial amount of this growth to ensure that we have, again, compact areas where people can access transit, bicycle and pedestrian services are available. And again, people have more than just hopping in a vehicle to get to work, get to activities, get to shopping. These various urban growth areas are zoned specifically for certain types of uses. So looking at the map that you see here on the right, that red area along 303 where Fred Meyer, Walmart, Safeway are all located, that is our commercial corridor. And then areas like yellow and blue are low density residential zones. So again, 5 dwelling units an acre, somewhere in that general area, a lot of single family housing. And then when you look at the brown and the black zones in there, you're looking at higher density housing. So again, you're looking at apartment complexes, condominiums, mixed use developments, things like that. And then when you get outside the little black boundary, you see green, which is the rural areas. We have a variety of rural zones, again, 5, 10, and 20 acre zones. Those are, again, intended to be protected from growth and to be able to maintain their rural character. And then locating rural and resource lands, the zoning ordinance is the thing that basically says, here is where mining is happening. Here is where long-term timber production is likely to occur. It's this document that really kind of outlines what the future of a community could end up looking like by establishing the zones with certain types of uses that will, again, be the thing that development is focusing on between now and 2044. So another question, this is actually a do you agree or do you not agree question. Kitsap has an adequate number of family wage jobs locally or easy access to them elsewhere. All right, if we can close up that poll. Let's see where we are. We have a good distribution. Somewhat agree is the one with the highest number of responses, along with somewhat disagree following somewhat closely behind. So yeah, obviously the ability to have employment, obviously we're very naval based in Kitsap County. And that the Navy provides a lot of family wage jobs, but the diversification of our economy is a question mark. Most of our jobs are either Navy-based or other public agency-based, like school districts, et cetera? How do we increase our private sector to ensure that there's a number of different jobs that a number of different people are able to obtain without having to cross the water to obtain them? So with that, we're going to turn the next slide over to Kirby.
Thanks, Eric. So environment is another required element of our comprehensive plan. Kitsap County, we recognize the importance of protecting the natural environment while also providing for the needs of the growing number of residents and businesses that call this place home. The environment chapter describes how the county intends to protect the natural environment, such as wetlands, streams, frequently flooded areas, fish and wildlife habitat, and aquifer recharge areas through what we call our critical areas ordinance. An integral part of the environment chapter is also the preservation of open space, both for recreational opportunities, forest cover, as well as protection of priority habitat through acquisition and incentive-based programs. The environment chapter conveys these concepts and provides the goals, direction, and path for the future of sustaining natural environments in Kitsap County. For the 2024 Comprehensive Plan Update, Kitsap County is emphasizing the need to plan for a resilient, natural, and built environment against the impacts of climate change, including sea level rise and wildfire prevention. We will also be addressing the need to reduce greenhouse gas emissions within our communities in order to meet countywide planning policies and the Puget Sound Vision 2050 goals. So our goals and policies regarding climate change resiliency will be incorporated into the different elements of the comprehensive plan as described by my colleagues tonight, instead of being a separate chapter in the comprehensive plan. And then we have another question for you. How important is addressing climate change over the next 20 years at a local level? Turn it over to you, Eric.
Excellent. Well, let's give this question a little time here. And actually, I think we may be moving over to Melissa next. Oh, all right, if we can close up this poll. Yep. What we have here is we have a substantial amount in the most important and very important sections. And again, the next one before that, somewhat important. So but definitely a significant importance in addressing climate change in our regulations and our built environment. So with that, turning it over to Melissa.
Thank you. So one of the elements in the comprehensive plan is our housing element. This is going to be one of the large focuses of this comprehensive plan update, largely because housing is such a large issue in Kitsap as well as throughout the state and throughout the country. The housing element will look at things like addressing homelessness, including services and shelters, as well as long-term housing. Removing barriers to housing access so that everyone at all income levels has access to housing. And that includes affordable housing for low-income residents in specific. We also want to make sure to integrate housing with services and transportation, so densifying in our urban areas, so that things like sidewalks, water and sewer are all available, as well as more economic to provide. If it were more available, how likely would you be to use public transit to travel to work, shopping, or other activities versus driving a vehicle? Okay, I think results now. So a lot of folks would like that opportunity. A few folks already do, and some folks may not take that opportunity. So pretty even spread there. Which leads us to our next element, which is all about transportation. Our transportation element is very important because all of the items that we address in there, we need to address in order to get funding from state and federal grants. And this includes things like vehicle traffic growth, including road improvements that meet or exceed adopted levels of service, diversifying options for transportation so that bikers and pedestrians also have facilities, and increasing the safety of roadways, which is safe usage by multiple users. Folks are pretty commonly familiar with the term complete streets. So that's sidewalks, bike lanes, and vehicle lanes all together. And then also making sure that there's transit availability. Currently, there's pretty good transit availability between our communities, but we also want to make sure that the transit is within our communities as well. And then as I mentioned, all of this needs to be in the plan so that we can ensure adequate funding for maintenance. So that's taking care of what we already have, as well as capital projects, which is funding new projects. So this is kind of the corollary to the other question. If it were more available, how likely would you be to bicycle or walk to work, shopping, or other activities versus driving a vehicle? And our results. So folks are very interested in being able to have active transportation. And so that is very useful information for us to have going forward. Thank you. Back to you, Eric or Colin.
Yep. So moving on to a different topic here is sub-area plans. I mentioned that at the beginning as one of the kind of elements of the comprehensive plan. And that's because certain areas are specific geographies actually deserve kind of their own planning. And so we have a few here in the county, a couple urban and 3 rural. Silverdale and Kingston urban sub-areas, urban centers, and rural communities are Suquamish, Manchester, and Keyport. I'll start by just kind of talking about the urban centers. So sub-area plans are kind of like a plan within a plan. So like in a comprehensive plan, you'll have a specific chapter just for Silverdale that lays out goals and policies, but also with just a little bit more detail, and also some action or implementation actions. For example, transportation projects or things like that for Silverdale. And these areas also are important in kind of the regional context. I talked before about the regional growth strategy. There are 29 regional growth centers, and Silverdale is one of those regional growth centers. And it's an important part of that strategy because it's where a lot of population and employment is allocated. But beyond just that, it's also a hallmark for the county for certain local planning efforts. So there's an opportunity there to look for transit services or meet other goals or things like that. There's also a specific criteria that would need to be met for a place like Silverdale in order to be actually considered an urban center or a regional center, and also be eligible for certain transportation funding. So these areas are important areas for business and population growth, but also areas to grow community and have things like civic uses and strive towards a compact walkable area with good urban design. So for example, Silverdale has a historic suburban development pattern and has a lot of jobs, but not quite as many people live there. So after hours, a lot of people go home. And so you're looking at goals to provide a better jobs housing balance, get less people just passing through, but also more residents, a more pedestrian friendly design, other amenities that make it a more vibrant community, for example. And so that'll be a topic of discussion in its own right, and there'll be meetings just on these specific areas. Like for Silverdale, in those meetings, we might talk about how can we incentivize more infill development and mixed use development, and maybe look at the design standards, things of that nature. So I think if you're interested in being involved in just these specific areas, it's good to know how these sub-area plans work. Similarly, for rural communities, or not so similarly because they're rural and they have much different goals and policies, we have Suquamish, Manchester, and Keyport. And these areas are called out because you'll see a more dense development pattern than you might see in other rural areas, much less than that required minimum one dwelling units per 5 acres, much more compact than that. And that's because these are historic areas that have a development pattern that precedes the Growth Management Act. So we want to recognize that, but not expand these areas. And we have policy folks that work specifically in these areas. And I also would encourage people to be involved with their community advisory councils like Suquamish and Manchester have, or Kingston or Central Kitsap. And so that's the summary for sub-area plans.
All right, well, that is a lot about what goes into a comprehensive plan, which again establishes a lot of goals and policies. Goals and policies are in many ways intended to be aspirational in nature. It is what the county wants to be when it grows up. Some of the documents I'm about to talk about are some of the ways that you can actually move to actually achieve some of these. Obviously, with goals and policies and the zoning maps and the various areas where you can build new housing, build new commercial, we need to assess the environmental impact of these zones. If we are to do one type of development in one type of area, or more broadly within an entire community, what would it end up looking like on our road systems, our water systems, our water systems, sewer systems, things of that nature. The capital facilities plan really kind of drills down on, okay, we have this many people who are living here. Are there enough ways for them to flush their toilets? Is there enough ways for them to turn on their faucets? Is there enough police and enough school teachers and enough school space to be able to serve their children and deal with criminal activity? All of this needs to be considered as we are looking at, again, a very large number of folks who are looking to move to our community between now and 2044. And then lastly, where the rubber hits the road is the development regulations. The goals and policies are very aspirational in nature. The development regulations in many ways are very firm. They are intended to be predictable in nature and gives the public, the developer, and staff a common understanding of how development is supposed to occur. This includes setbacks, landscaping standards, height, things like that that are necessary to actually construct buildings, and the ones that the people and members of the public notice most. That is the area where folks go, wait a moment. That's what's going up here. That's why it's so important to pay attention to the zoning aspect to know exactly what kind of construction, what kind of densities are allowed in your neighborhood. Because once the development regulation, once the permits come forward, things get a lot more complicated. So as I indicated, we're talking about growth. So how much growth are we talking about? Between 2020 and 2024, this again is based on Vision 2050's population targets through the Puget Sound Regional Council. We're looking at around 70,747 new people between now and 2044. Employment, another 46,000 jobs are looking to come to our areas. And again, these are intended to be focused in cities and some of our growth centers, Silverdale in particular, Kingston less so. So while we mentioned that these are targets, these again are intending to what Vision 2050 and the Puget Sound Regional Council will say, bend the trend. They aren't necessarily focused on past growth rates. What they're looking at is they are looking at how to ensure that we are getting population in our community cores, in our downtowns, to provide communities and that denser and more diverse housing and employment opportunities. And again, for us, Silverdale and Kingston are going to be two of those focus areas. That provides the demand side of what is a very large planning math problem. We know we have this number of people who are looking to come to our community and looking to work in our community. And then we have the supply side, which is the zoning. The zoning allows for a certain type of development. In that area, there's a certain amount of land that is available for development, vacant land, underutilized land, places that can be constructed upon over the next 20 years. We need to ensure that the number of people that are coming to our community match the number of people, the amount of land that we have zoned properly to be able to accommodate them. And that is what leads to the sizing of our urban areas to make sure that they are just as big as they need to be and that they're capable of accepting the growth. If we don't adequately accept the growth and we contract land supply, that is one of many things that I'll talk about here in a minute that is affecting housing affordability and causing home prices to increase over time. So here's some of the other numbers that we're looking at through here. Like I believe Colin mentioned, there are certain classifications of communities in the Puget Sound Regional Council's Vision 2050. The first of which, in the highest order, is metropolitan cities. For us, that's Bremerton. As you can tell, these are the population numbers. You're looking at around 20,000 people are looking to come to Bremerton over the next 20-some-year period. Then we have core city, which to a degree is a misnomer because Silverdale is not a city, but it is the next highest classification of growth. And there we're looking at almost 10,000 people coming to Silverdale. And then we have the high capacity transit communities, which make up our other cities, Poulsbo, Port Orchard, Bainbridge Island, the urban growth areas around them, and Kingston. These are classified for growth based upon the fact that they have access to regular transit service, or in many cases like Kingston, multiple forms of ferry service to downtown Seattle. And that is requiring a certain amount of growth to come to these areas to, again, keep the pressure off of our rural areas and hopefully ensure that we are providing enough land and enough housing opportunities in our urban areas to be able to address some of our increasing housing affordability issues. And then I'll just highlight at the end here, you have rural. That is, again, where we're supposed to be putting the fewest number of people. It is also the area, the largest landmass in the county. We are looking at only 5,000 people over the next 20 plus years. So looking at housing affordability, like we talked about climate change being one of the areas of emphasis in the comprehensive plan, how are we going to address our increasing housing costs? And that's both rentals and ownership. Like I mentioned before, it isn't just about the built environment. It's not just about the natural environment. It's about how can we maintain the people who lived in this community for so many years as they age, as they have children, and their children can continue to live in Kitsap County. The median home price of a single family home is rapidly getting out of the reach of most of our residents. It is a continuing challenge, especially in the post-COVID world, when now folks are able to telecommute to jobs on the other side of the water that pay substantially higher wages than many of the jobs in Kitsap County. That creates a push on the cost of many things, including housing. Kitsap County is very single-family detached housing focused. Of all the 4 counties in the Puget Sound Regional Council grouping, we are the most dependent on single-family detached. So if you take a look at the charts in regards to the increases in prices of housing over the last 15 years, single-family detached is the one that is going up almost the fastest. The only one that's going up faster than that, high-rise condos. So again, high-rise condos and then single-family detached homes. What are some of the housing types that are more affordable? That would be triplexes, duplexes, fourplexes, and again, low-level multifamily. And we need to find a way that we can make multifamily an ownership option. So much of multifamily is rental only, and rentals are incredibly important in Kitsap County, but there are folks who want that type of housing, but want to be able to own. They want to be able to control their long-term housing costs, and we just don't have that much of that in unincorporated Kitsap County, and to a degree, Kitsap County as a whole. Housing is not going to get cheaper. As I indicated, there's a whole number of reasons why housing has gone up in cost. And everyone thinks it's something else other than the thing they're involved in. I work in government. Regulation is something that constantly is brought up as a thing that increases the price of housing. Yes, regulation does have an impact on the cost of housing, but it's not the only thing. There's the market. There's the availability of land. There's the topography. There is folks who are taking homes, and instead of renting them out to long-term folks, they're using them as short-term vacation rentals. That's not knocking short-term vacation rentals, but it's another piece of the overall puzzle that we need to work to actually drive, at least, if not drive down, at least maintain the price of housing in our community. And to do that, we're really going to be focused on a lot of incentives in this upcoming comprehensive plan. How can we help the market construct a more diverse set of housing types so that people of differing income streams can continue to live in this community or come and move to this community? That could be multifamily tax exemptions in downtown Silverdale, giving incentives for multifamily construction to ensure that Silverdale turns into something more than a shopping and medical destination, but a place where people live, work, and recreate 24/7, not between 10 or 11 in the morning and 8 or 9 at night. I'm in bed by 9, so probably not 9. So the next question we have now, we're going to get down to some of the headier questions, and we're going to use the T word, taxes. If taxes had to be raised to address a community need, which would you support most? And again, this is another one of those most questions based upon priority. We'll give a little more time on this one because there's a lot more options. Okay, I think we can close that poll. Yep. And the results, protecting habitat to speed salmon recovery is tied with reduced traffic and safer local roadways. But there is a lot of comment, a lot of job creation, bike lanes and sidewalks in urban areas. Affordable housing is particularly low, and increased number of parks and more amenities. So that is the results of that survey. So moving on, we kind of talked about what all the documents are going to be, what's going to be in them, but how's this update process going to move forward? So what we're looking at is currently we are reviewing the current comprehensive plans, goals, and policies in county code. We're meeting with the public, and I'm going to cover some of the upcoming meetings and how we're going to continue to reach out to the public on some of these topics to see where our goals and policies may be lacking, or where we need to be focusing new initiatives in areas like climate change and housing affordability. That's where the public outreach and comment comes in. As we're moving along and go through the comprehensive plan, we're also going to be talking about what the zoning and urban area maps look like. Remember, we have this math problem. We have the demand of population and jobs, and then we have to ensure that we're meeting the supply. We have a land capacity analysis that determines the supply, and to that end, we need to look at differing ways to address that population and that employment growth. Generally, that leads to us developing 3 alternatives for an environmental analysis. Generally, the first alternative is pretty much the way things are today, which we know does not accommodate the population and employment growth. But then the other 2 are action alternatives. How could today's reality change, whether it be intensifying density downtown, whether it be providing incentives for certain types of housing, or if push comes to shove, what areas, if any, should be expanded for additional urban opportunities. There's public outreach and comment on those alternatives as the board comes down, and then after a public hearing decides, okay, here are the 3 alternatives that we're going to do an environmental impact statement on. So the draft environmental impact statement is developed based upon those 3 alternatives. What is that that's going to tell us again, what does this number of people do to our road system? What does it do to our wastewater system? What does it do to stormwater and a number of other things? How does it affect parks and schools and those types of services? That then will be released along with a draft comprehensive plan, which makes adjustments to the goals and policies and revised development regulations. Again, that is what development has to meet as they're constructing in our community. There's then going to be additional public outreach and comment, additional meetings, etc., as we move to a preferred alternative, where we winnow 3 alternatives down to 1 alternative, and then there's a public hearing held on that. When I say public hearings, that is the old school. Everybody comes down to the Port Orchard Port Orchard Administration Building, or they can still connect via Zoom, and you testify directly before your Board of County Commissioners. After a preferred alternative is selected, a final environmental impact statement that focuses on the environmental impacts of that alternative, a revised comprehensive plan based upon public comment, based upon the results of the draft environmental impact statement, and now a capital facilities plan, which again is ensuring that water districts, school districts, fire districts, all are providing necessary services at particular levels of standard to meet the growth needs. And all of that is available, again, for public review, and then ultimately a public hearing before the board for potential approval. So to kind of look at that a different way, as I indicated, public input is going to be critical throughout this process. But there's going to be certain times where key decisions are being made that is going to be most important for people to focus. Again, this is due no later than December 31st, 2024. But because you never know what's going to happen, especially over a 2-year comprehensive plan period, we're currently targeting August 2024 to conclude the plan. That gives us an opportunity to handle unknown issues and unexpected events that come along with every comprehensive plan that I've ever been involved with over my last 30 years. So looking at this a different way, when I'm talking about the preliminary alternatives, when are those going to be discussed? Again, we're going to be having a series of meetings talking about land use, talking about employment, talking about housing, and talking about mapping between now and March 20th, 2023. That's when the board will be determining the 3 alternatives for environmental review. So coming up that fall, with staff and the consultants will come together and put together the draft EIS comp plan and development regulations that will be released in September of 2023. Again, additional public comment, additional public participation as we come down to a preferred alternative at the end of next year. And then the final EIS comp plan, capital facilities plan and regulations would be released in March of 2024. Hearings would be held, and then ultimately the board would be approving a final document in August of 2024. So hopefully we hit that date. I think there's a lot of things that could be great in the comprehensive plan that would be great if we got them up and running as soon as possible. Effects on climate change, housing options. We don't really necessarily want to wait if we don't have to on those types of topics. So how are we going to handle public outreach? It is going to be a combination of in-person and virtual. COVID happened, and in many ways, COVID is still here. People are still immunocompromised. COVID is still a pretty significant fear. So we are going to provide an opportunity for both in-person and virtual opportunity. Today, we're obviously having a Zoom meeting, and we're planning a series of additional Zoom meetings coming up with the idea being that a lot of them are informational in nature. We can videotape them, so you don't necessarily have to just be there to see. And with some of the technology in Zoom, breakout rooms allows us a virtual, not perfect, but ability for people to sit around and talk about particular key issues. And that's something that we're going to be doing in our upcoming virtual meetings. We're also going to be having in-person open houses, the way we did it pre-COVID. We would go to a single location in Kitsap County or more than one. We would have staff there. People would be able to come between 1 hour and another hour. That is convenient for some and is very beneficial for others. Some find it difficult to fit into their busy lives. Zoom has a lot of positives and negatives, one of which has allowed us to pack a lot more into our workday and pack a lot more into our general lives. That makes traveling places a lot more difficult than they were in the past. And then we are going to have a very robust webpage. We're also going to be having surveys, comments, and polls, weekly polls coming up for people to be able to weigh in. Some of those aren't going to be quite as simple as today's. They're going to be more of the forced choice type questions. If you had to do blank, and would you do X or Y? If you had to choose between X or Y, which would you choose and why? Rank things. So again, it all kind of comes down to another way for people who can't necessarily make it to public meetings to participate in the process. Comp planning is not a popular vote. So this is not, well, if the most number of people come in and hit this one survey a particular way, that's the way it's going to be. But it is an important part of the overall input consolidation that leads to conversations and discussions. And then lastly, again, it's the old school public hearings. You come, you testify before your commissioner, that testimony is taken into the record and considered. As we're talking about individual communities, if you're particularly interested in Kingston, if you're particularly interested in Illahee or Silverdale, it's going to be very important that you pay attention to their community councils and their community groups. A lot of that information is available on the Kitsap County webpage on the community council sites. That's a lot of place where local input is going to be generated as it applies to, again, those very specific areas. Suquamish and Manchester are other examples. So please stay tuned to your community councils if those are areas that you're particularly interested in. And then lastly, I'm going to cover a process that's going on right now, which is also part of public outreach. We have put out word that we are accepting potential changes to property zoning or changes to the text of the comprehensive plan or development regulations. There are folks who have very specific ideas about our community out there, and we wanted to ensure that they had an opportunity to make their desires known and that they made them known as soon in the process as possible. It's really important to know how big the bread box is in any kind of comprehensive plan and take in all the ideas as soon as possible. As we go through and we talk about what areas might be good for growth, one of the things that's also very important to know is what do the people in that area think about that? And one of the ways to get that is through people proposing particular changes, either to zoning inside the urban growth area, zoning in the rural areas, we're definitely seeing a certain amount of, as well as code changes such as setbacks and parking requirements. Density is all based on parking. Where are you going to put the cars? There's a lot of folks with a lot of ideas on that. That submission period has been extended until September 15th of this year. We wanted to ensure that people who were at this meeting knew that they had the opportunity to submit these reclassification requests. We have pretty much turned over every rock to tell people that this is going on, but we wanted to make sure that people who attended today had an opportunity, and you have until September 15th. The application is free. If you have questions about the application, you have the opportunity to meet with staff, the folks you're seeing here today. That meeting is also free. So again, if you have ideas about particular areas, particular properties that you want to see different than they are today, please consider the reclassification process. I do want to put in there, though, just because you submit, there's no guarantee it is going to become real. Again, we have all the goals and policies of the comprehensive plan. We have all the elements that we need to balance, and these reclassification requests are going to fit in to that kind of discussion. So some of the virtual workshops that we have coming up, this is really only the next couple of months that we're looking at. We have virtual workshops, the first of which is land use and economic development. That's where we're going to be spending a lot of time talking about zoning. When we say urban low, what does that mean in regards to housing types? When we talk about commercial, neighborhood commercial, what does that mean? Some of that kind of information, as well as talking about urban growth area sizing, where the urban area starts and stops in Silverdale, where it starts and stops around Port Orchard. Then we're going to talk about housing, which is going to be a lot about housing affordability and incentives. How do we provide greater diversity of housing in Kitsap County? Then we're going to have the environment and climate change. You can see the dates here. The environment and climate change is going to be on October 11th. They're all at 6 p.m. At this point, they are all virtual workshops. We are working on, again, the breakout room concept, which will hopefully allow folks to group in smaller opportunities to be able to talk to each other verbally, not just through Q&A. And then we have the discussion of the Silverdale Regional Center. There is so much population and so much employment that's targeted in that area. And we have a very commercially oriented downtown. We need to have a lot of discussion about how we can turn the ship and turn Silverdale into more of a downtown community, a 24/7 destination, not just the daytime. And then transportation and capital facilities, talking about traffic, talking about safety, talking about non-motorized facilities. That comes up a little bit before Halloween on the 25th of October. And then, like I mentioned, the community plans, the sub-area plans, they're all being discussed by their individual community councils, and one of which is the Kingston group. So please visit the Kingston sub-area plan site, and we will get you in contact with the folks necessary to attend these meetings and participate through that venue as well. So with that, we got one final question. What is your preferred method of participating in the comprehensive plan update? There are merits to all of them. Some are more convenient than others. Some are more comfortable for people than others. All right. Well, with that, let's close the poll. In-person community meetings and Zoom workshops are the two. Surveys, social media, a little less. Public hearings before the Board of Commissioners have a few, 8%, but I guess it's 3 of 40 folks. So yeah, it looks like Zoom workshops, and again, the in-person, and there is intended to be a balance of those to ensure that people who feel comfortable in both have those types of opportunities. So this is some of the important information. Please make sure that if you have any questions regarding the comprehensive plan after this meeting, or if someone you know is viewing this on YouTube or on the website, if they have questions, please contact us through compplan@kitsap.gov. And then if you have a question, you can utilize the regular phone system. I know it feels so antiquated nowadays, but it is an option to be able to get in touch with Colin, Melissa, Kirby, and Jim. And then lastly, a lot of the information, we're going to have a lot of story mapping located on the website that basically kind of describes things like land use. What is urban low zoning? What is commercial zoning? What kind of development does that look like? When we say X number of parking spots, what does that really look like on a site? We're going to try to do some of those types of things for people who want additional information before providing testimony, and that's all going to be located at this webpage, or just hit Google and type in Kitsap Comprehensive Plan. So with that, really appreciate everybody attending tonight. I'm going to take a look at the question and answer section and see if there are some that we can answer here. It is 7:10, so we still have some time. So working through here. Okay, let's start at the top. We have a question about Arborwood, which is located just to the southwest of downtown Kingston. It says, how does Arborwood fit into this? Doesn't seem to be very environmentally thought out, and where is the infrastructure to support these hundreds of homes? The Arborwood development was approved back when I was first starting with Kitsap County as a rural PUD. It was 1 acre lots and included the entire eastern side of the North Kitsap Heritage Park. The idea was all of that was going to be 1 acre lots. People live in South Kitsap. I think you see some of that kind of development down off Mulnix. Sometime during the late 2000s, there was the idea that we could preserve a significant amount in the parks while providing more intense development, and the owners of the property converted that proposal to an urban development, which again was included inside an urban growth area boundary, has sewer from the sewer wastewater plant located right there on Norman Road. And then we are working on the various roadway improvements that are going to be necessary to get them from Arborwood, likely much of which on South Kingston Road and then West Kingston Road, to the downtown of Kingston. Arborwood is a vested project. It has a certain amount of time to move forward. We are looking at how Arborwood fits into the overall Kingston community and how downtown Kingston could take in more population and more employment versus places like Arborwood, or needing to pressure to do urban growth area expansion similar to that. Again, Arborwood was something that was very different, and due to the way that it's developed now, over the last 20 years, Kitsap has seen benefit from it in regards to another 300 acres of environmentally protected and recreation opportunities in the eastern portion of the Heritage Park. But that's one of the things that the environmental impact statement is going to be looking at, is Arborwood and other areas. Okay. Do alternatives include substantial changes to current administrative codes? If there are large changes being proposed, like if we were to do away with parking requirements in its entirety, yes, those would need to appear in the alternatives. If it's changing a word or changing a number from 10 feet to 15 feet, not necessarily in those alternatives. They will be considered as part of the environmental impact statement, but you're not going to see them pop up as much in the alternatives. But we are looking at changes to our subdivision code, our zoning code, et cetera. And we do expect that is all going to be located in our various draft documents as we're moving forward. That reclassification process I mentioned, that would be an opportunity for people to insert requests for changes to regulations, administrative code, et cetera. Anyone here that I do not answer, please, we will follow up with them later on. When will the high capacity transit station areas be discussed? The high capacity transit areas, again, are Kingston, Poulsbo, Port Orchard, Bainbridge Island. These are areas that are currently facing, other than Bainbridge Island, a substantial amount of growth. For the last 3 decades, there's always been the situation of, well, the cities aren't growing like they're supposed to. Well, over the last 5 to 7 years, they are. Poulsbo and Port Orchard are growing faster than at any time in their past. So growth management, which says that these urban areas are supposed to be the place where growth occurs, is now happening in Kitsap County. And we really do need to have a conversation with transit and with other organizations to ensure that we can get people not just from these high capacity transit communities, but get them around the high capacity transit communities. If we're talking about density, we need to talk about how people have ways to get around that don't include their vehicles. Otherwise, we have the parking question. Where are someone going to park all of their vehicles? And that is kind of why transit becomes so important, to ensure that people can get from the mall area to the hospital, not necessarily just the mall to Poulsbo or the Kingston Ferry. So I think there's going to be a lot of emphasis on that when it comes to transit discussions. Is there any plans for farmland preservation as part of the comprehensive plan update? I think we definitely have a series of programs that are in place right now in regards to tax incentives. Obviously, the preservation of agriculture is important when we're talking about urban growth areas, and if we expand them and ensuring that we're not expanding out into areas that are agriculture. We did adopt an agricultural code that was intended to make things easier for certain types of small scale agriculture, but I think there's a lot of work to be done on that. And we are definitely welcoming any kind of proposals or things that we can utilize in Kitsap County to make it easier for small farmers to continue here in Kitsap County, especially with our spiraling property costs. I'm going to take one more. Okay, I am now quoting out of this because I'm not going to call you folks uneducated. As a group, we are very uneducated and knowledgeable about the importance of the comp plan. So your attendance here is very low, 46. How can we increase interest and participation? Honestly, it is you folks going out into the community and indicate that this is going on. I have been out to pretty much every hen house, dog house, all over the county, talking about this comprehensive plan and what's going to be moving forward. But really, it is you folks who know what your community is like. It's you who know what you want to see, and you know other people who are interested in having that conversation. It's helping them understand the opportunities that we see here. The opportunities on the website, the opportunities at the meetings, whether it be Zoom or in person, and again, contacting staff. We are available to take comments, take questions. We want to be engaged with the community. We just need folks to reach out. So we are again going to be utilizing social media. We're going to be using YouTube. We're going to be using a number of things that aren't necessarily traditional. But we are also going to be trying to work through a number of the in-person open house type events. For the folks who are more comfortable with that. So again, we really recommend that folks come out. We are going to be putting out as much information as we can without turning into your spam filter. But it really is important for members of the community to have these conversations, to talk about, hey, I was at this presentation, they were talking about Kingston taking population. I think it's really important that you can go check this out. And oh, by the way, here's the website. Again, also the contact information, compplan.kitsap.gov is the way you get to each and every one of us. So please participate heavily. If there are any questions that we people attending, we do have some residual questions that have not been answered. Some of them are very specific in nature. So we will focus on those, and we will make sure that those answers get posted on the website. Again, if I didn't mention, it is kcowa.us/compplan. So with that, I want to say thank you to everybody. And I hope you guys have a great evening. I hope you survive the heat wave. And we really look forward to you at one of the next upcoming meetings, which again, I'm going to go back to real quick. I think I am. Hello. All right, well, apparently my technology has failed me just at the perfect time. So again, I want to thank everybody for coming. My name is Eric Baker, Colin Poff, Melissa Shoemake, Kirby, and Jim Rogers are going to be available to say hi, talk to you, and work through all the things that are coming to our community over the next 20 years. And we really appreciate your time tonight.